Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Coffee. Without it, we would never have had the Industrial Revolution. We'd all be still living in Europe in mud huts. Here in Laredo, we have the Organic Man Coffee Trike. 4501 McPherson, the best coffee on the planet. If you can't get to Laredo, you can order from the Organic Man Coffee Trike shop. Welcome back to Story Time with Chris James. I know one of these days I'm going to say strange things with Chris James instead. It's going to happen. So I'm going to forgive myself for not being perfect. Here we go back where I left off in the last episode. At 9, Al picked up his phone and called his brother. The phone rang a few times before he heard his brother's voice. Al, what's up? What's up? Hey, Ray, I just called to check on Pam. Patty was wondering why she was working so late, and also I thought I'd give you a call. Oh, yes, working, yeah, we're all working, yes, that's it. You know, Axel Munden, the thing coming up. Access Monday. Yes, that's it. Anyway, lots to do. Don't be such a stranger. See ya. Click. Ray looked at his watch and then he called Eddie. Eddie was just sitting down to dinner with his family. His wife Patty was adjusting everyone's schedule to meet with Eddie's unusual hours. The kids were just about to begin when the phone rang. Eddie checked the caller ID and then he answered. Yes, sir. What's up? Eddie. Eddie. I was just wondering, is Penny or no, Pam? By any chance, is Pam, still there? Well, that is she still at the office? Yeah, the office. I don't know. I'm at home. Yes, you are. It's what? Anyway, see, I got a call from my brother Al. Pam's father is named Al, and he was wondering where she was. That is, where Pam was. Yes, where's Pam? Do you know? Eddie didn't bother asking Ray. He would have. Eddie didn't bother asking if Ray had called the office. He would have, and Pam wouldn't have answered. I guess I'll drive over and have a look. Yes, that's it. Have a good look. If you could. Thanks. Eddie headed out the door, once more missing dinner with his family. Mr. Armstrong was tired of waiting for that airhead secretary to bring his go bag. He was watching as that meathead Milton had his Arnold Schwarzenegger imitation. This guy spends as much time at the gym as I spend at the gun range. Mr. Armstrong was growing impatient. By 9, the meathead was winding down. He'd been lifting weights here at the waiting room for the past 3 hours. Mr. Armstrong had tried calling Ray's niece, but she wasn't answering. It was time to put the bracelets on this monkey. Mr. Armstrong watched as Milton finished his last set, leaving the weights on the bar. He didn't even bother to wipe the sweat off the bench. What a turkey. Milton walked to the door and stepped out into the parking lot. As he ambled towards a car parked in the handicapped parking spot, Mr. Armstrong made his move. The corridor went on forever. As Pam walked, she would come to dozens, sometimes hundreds of these weird windows mounted on both walls. Some were lit up from the other side, while others remained dark. Each of the lit-up windows looked out on a different room. There were lots of bathrooms, and, well, some were being used. Others looked out on bedrooms. These tended to be very big windows, and the rooms all looked like hotel rooms. Then there were little windows, all sizes and shapes. They were mostly pitch black, but one she looked into showed a person's mouth. Their lips, actually. Pam watched as someone was smearing lipstick on, and then the light went out. There were more than one scene Pam had to cover her eyes and slip past the unwanted view. That what has been seen cannot be unseen. Oh, ick, that's gross. Pam thought about the weird windows. They were like the other side of mirrors? No way, this was just crazy. Crazy but true. Look, if you want to say something that will help. Grumble, mumble, I'm grateful. What was that? Nothing. Moving farther and farther down the tunnel of visions, Pam felt as if she needed a shower after invading into the privacy of so many unsuspecting people. Eventually, Pam felt the Z-Monster was lurking nearby. She had now been awake for over 40 hours, with hardly anything to eat. Her teeth itched. She just wanted to rest her eyes for a minute. Just one. Eddie stopped next to Pam's car, still parked in front of the bag office. He glanced inside to be sure she wasn't sleeping in the front seat, and then went inside to check on the missing teen. There was her cell phone sitting on the shelf by the door, and her purse sitting on the edge of the desk, used as a reception. Eddie remembered Pam set it there when he handed her the book that still sat in the middle of the desk. Think, where would she go? Not all doors were locked. He checked Cassandra's office. Pam had looked a bit tired and might have used the healer's office to catch a quick nap. Not there. Start at the top and work down. Eddie headed for the attic. Eddie came to the top of the attic steps and found Mr. Armstrong's door had been left open. Not like him at all. Stepping into the office, Eddie scanned the room for signs of a missing teen. In the corner was a laundry chute that had some rather conspicuous drag marks leading to it. Thinking quickly, Eddie came up with an idea. Mr. Armstrong must have called and asked for something from his office. Pam came to get it and for some reason pushed it down the laundry chute. So, where would it come out? He hoped he was wrong. Running down the stairs, he quickly checked each floor for laundry chutes. Once reaching the ground floor, he went to the cellar door. It was still secured with the wooden beam. Lifting it, Eddie opened the door and looked down into the darkness. He could hear the scuttling sounds of things living in the abyss. Pam, are you down there? He listened for an answer. When he hadn't heard from the missing teen, he grabbed the desk phone, calling for some reinforcements. George came riding along. This time he was on the back of a camel. The camel was chewing tobacco and kept spitting in every direction. Did you manage to put the end kit away? We can't seem to locate it. Pam tried to remember where she'd left the overly heavy bag. George began shining a spotlight directly into Pam's eyes. It was bright and made her slumber uncomfortable. She tried covering her face with her blanket, but she couldn't find it, so she used her arm. Her bed was too hard and lumpy, so Pam tried rolling to a more user-friendly position. It was too cold in her room, way too cold. Pam came to with a start. She was laying on the floor of this hallway of mirrors. The light was coming from a mirror that appeared to be hanging on the side of a car somewhere. Another car was too close with its high beams on. The offended driver's hand appeared at the edge of the mirror, and the light went dim, and then it vanished. All along the hallway, lights were coming on and then winking out. Some stayed on for minutes, and others never showed. The corridor went on for miles. Just ahead, Pam spotted a small oval light, about the size of a hand mirror. A feeling came to her that this might be important. Stepping up close, Pam looked into, or rather out, of the oval mirror. Dolores Delanoche was trying to drink her coffee while scanning her periphery to watch for attacking gremlins. Eddie had pots of coffee going after calling in the few staff he knew would bother to show up. Cassandra had come right away, as well as George, who promptly fell asleep. Barbara, what was her last name again? Had come only because she needed to pick up her check. At least that's what she said. Eddie knew she was more concerned than she was willing to admit. Grandy and Carol Munchausen, the pet psychic, came to help out. This gave them 7. Well, 6 since George was out for the count. Are you sure she went into the basement? That's such a horrible place. Cassandra had been down there one time, back in the early days of her career. Eddie said, the laundry chute has an opening on each floor, but it exits into the basement. All the chutes are covered by furniture, so she had to go all the way to the bottom. He looked into his half-empty coffee cup. Here's the plan. We'll all wear our protective crystals, so... His plan was interrupted when Dolores screamed. There's a monster behind me. She had jumped from her stool, crawled across the counter. Lifting her mirror once more, she saw a pair of red eyes looking back at her from the glass. She screamed. She spun around, but the monster's eyes stayed in the looking glass, staring out at her. As Dolores tried to escape the monster, only visible in her mirror, she collided with Eddie, who'd been standing behind the counter. Eddie got a look at the bright red eyes, looking out at him. Then he recognized them. It's Pam. She's looking out of your mirror. He could see the wall right through her. She was lucent, but very much there. Huh? Pam's a monster? No, she's looking out of your mirror. She missed a lot of sleep, so her eyes are a bit bloodshot. Everyone gathered around to look into the reflective surface. Dolores felt just a bit embarrassed about carrying on so much. How did she get inside my mirror? More important, how do we get her out? This was from Cassandra. Pam, can you hear me? Eddie tried speaking into the glass. The look on Pam's face told him no. Pam was looking into and out of the oval mirror when she recognized Dolores, the woman with the mirror fetish. Then she saw Eddie and the rest of the staff all looking back at her. Some were moving their lips, but she couldn't hear a word. Somebody held up a notebook with writing on it, but it didn't make any sense. Then Pam realized it was all backwards. Mirror writing. How did you get inside the mirror? Good question. Pam considered the events of the night before. I stepped through a... No. Good they couldn't hear her. Feeling all of her pockets, she found no pen to write with. That was okay because she had nothing to write on, even if she had a pen. Someone held up another note. Did the laundry chute send you into the mirror world? She shook her head. The next note came up into the mirror. Is the entry in the basement? She gave them a thumbs up. Is there any kind of a creature down there? Another thumbs up. The last note. Wait right next to the portal. We'll come get you. Pam smiled, but the note somehow conveyed the feeling they hoped it would work. As she began to make her way back to the beginning of this long, long corridor. All the staff members began putting on whatever protective devices they had. Cassandra was performing a protection invocation while Carol Munchausen lifted the prince onto her lap and petted him fiercely. Barbara, what's her name, pulled a bag from her purse and tied it around her waist. With as much preparation as they could abide, the intrepid group of various psychic operatives made their way to the cellar stairs. Should we wake George? He looks too comfortable. We'd better leave him. Eddie opened the door leading down to the basement, and they descended into the unknown. Eddie went first, holding a huge hand light. Cassandra was next. She held a pendulum out in front of her, watching for any movement. Barbara was thinking just how much this looked like a scene from every horror movie she'd ever seen. Grandy had his eyes closed. He didn't want to see how many bodies might be littering this old musty cellar. Dolores had her mirror out to the wall so she could keep an eye on anything coming at them from the open space to her left. Carol had the prints held to her like a shield. No one spoke as they sauntered down into the less than inviting subterranean chamber. As their feet found a stopping place in the dirt at the bottom, sounds came from far away, slithering and squelching of nasty critters. Eddie panned the light around them. This caused the sound to suddenly scamper away, driven away by a light they hadn't encountered in years. Stay together and be alert. The world needs more alerts. He laughed at his own joke. They began to search the basement for anything that looked like a portal. Cassandra watched as her pendulum began to swing, just ever so slightly. I'm getting something here. We're going in the right direction. Each member of the rescue party was amazed at how whoppingly large the subterranean crypt appeared. It must have extended out from under the building above by several blocks. They stopped once so every often so each member could catch their breath and check for missing items. The far wall came into view. Cassandra took a few steps one way and then the other. This way, the energy is getting stronger. Eddie let her take the lead. He stayed close with the light. Here it is, the doorway to Mirror World. Cassandra held her pendulum up next to a huge antique mirror. The pendulum was looking more like a tiny fan than a small wooden weight. The mirror was floor to ceiling. The frame was intricate with lots of carvings. They looked as if somebody had spent a few years fashioning them. At one time there had been a cover over the looking glass, but time had turned the cover into a brittle, stale, shabby remnants of the past. I've worked here 12 years, and I've never known this thing was down here. Dolores looked at her reflection in the silvery glass. I've been down here. I've never seen it, Cassandra said. You came down here? Barbara asked. A long time ago. I was a lot thinner. Cassandra curtsied at herself in the mirror. Her blue, reversed image looked a bit thinner. The sounds of scuttling and squelching grew a bit closer. Eddie played the light back and forth, but it didn't get the desired result this time. Our nemesis seems to have gotten used to the light. Let's hurry and get Pam out of this thing and get ourselves out of here. That's what Prince Guapo del Cuerpo says. And Carol piped up from behind the blurry fall. The furry ball. If you haven't noticed, my tongue gets worn out once in a while. The furry ball. Dolores stood to the side of the antique mirror, looking at the glass from an angle. She worked her way from standing down to a crouch. Next, she got down on one knee, still scanning the glass. I see her, I think. There's someone on the other side, she thought. Barbara pulled a notebook and began to write. Pam saw her new friends standing on the other side of this huge glass. It was illuminated by Eddie's flashlight. Barbara, what was her last name again? Anyway, she was holding up a note. Try to come through the glass. Pam thought that sounded too easy. Could it be like that? She strode forward and smacked into the cold, hard glass. Ow. A new note came up. Try closing your eyes and walk forward from a few feet back. Pam thought this might just work. She strode back to what should be an appropriate distance. Then, with her eyes closed, she began to walk out of this creepy place. Ow, that hurt! She had smashed into the mirror, nose first. A new note number 2 came up. How about backing through? Later, a note came up. It was number 8 or so. Run backwards and distract yourself at the last second. Pam read this. How am I supposed to distract myself? Walking down the corridor of mirrors, Pam took up what she considered a running backwards stance and prepared herself for a dash to victory in the reverse. With a feeling of embarrassment, Pam took off, only thankful no one was there to see her less than graceful efforts. As she went, Pam thought about how she had gotten here in the first place. Monsters, darkness, scared, a step backwards through the mirror. How on earth am I going to recreate that situation? Then a thought came to her. I wasn't running, I was walking backwards. Cassandra and Barbara caught her as she suddenly popped out from the glass face. Now that's what I call an entrance. Once all the welcomes back from the other side and hope you're all theirs and had been said, Eddie pointed out their still unsafe situation. We should get out of here. Those things are getting too comfortable with the light. The rescuers all got in some semblance of a line, and they began working their way back to the far distant stair. The light was just visible from where they were. Eddie kept the light going, trying to dissuade any unwanted visitations from unsavory creatures. His light fell on something sitting in the dirt. Pam recognized the case. That's what got me down here in the first place. She had no desire to retrieve it. Dolores said Mr. Armstrong's go bag. We really should take it back up with us. No one wanted to leave the safety of the group. Finally, everyone walked out to where the bag sat, staying close to each other for protection. Grandy reached out and grasped the case by its handles. He was barely able to lift it. They worked their way back to the wall. Almost there, Eddie led the team to the stairs. They stormed up the steps, not wanting to spend more time in this musty, damp cellar than they had to. The stairs made a lot of falling apart noises, but held together as the rescue party moved from bottom to top in the fastest time to date. Carmen wound up on her hands and knees as she scrambled out of the basement door. Grandy tripped over her and wound up on his back as Carol bounded over him, the prince secured in her arms. The go-bag slid away along the hallway, coming to rest against Pam's desk. As the last member cleared the portal, Eddie slammed it shut as Pam slipped the wooden beam into place. He said, "There, that wasn't so hard." He was gasping for breath. Back to the coffee bar for cups of celebratory Java. Everyone wanted to know what it was like in Mirrorland. Pam gave them all the details she could voice. Then Cassandra said, "It's way past time you were in bed. I'll give you a ride. You're in no shape to be behind the wheel." Pam woke as the pickup pulled up in front of her house. Call me when you want to retrieve your car. You should take Sunday off. We can manage without you." Pam didn't remember entering her home. Being a weekend, her folks were up watching TV. They watched their daughter as she zombied across the floor and stumbled up the stairs. Paula said, "They must have a lot of paperwork at that place." Al yielded. "Good night. See you in the morning." Pam responded with a mumble, 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 mayhem. Ugh. As she fell into bed, thinking how nice it was to still be alive. Waldo was awake, reprogramming his video game so he could kill more characters without having to reload his machine guns. He liked the game, but it required way too much activity that didn't involve dead bodies. Now his weapons would never need attention. The demon looked in through his window. It liked what he saw. Chapter 8. A Non-Healing. Pam woke around noon. She was still dressed from yesterday, which meant she was still dressed from the day before. Looking down at her outfit, it was way past due for a washing. Ugh, I can't believe I slept like this. And she headed for the shower. Paula had food ready for when her offspring decided to rejoin the living. So, how was work? Pam considered the question. Monsters, demons, mirror world, voices in her head, craziness. Too much paperwork. I need to go in today, maybe tomorrow. Monday for sure. She didn't even know what day it was. Are you getting enough sleep? How about eating? Are you getting a balanced diet? 5 gallons of coffee and stale sandwiches. Yes, Mom, I'm taking really good care of myself. When we suggested you get a job and learn some responsibility, we didn't mean for you to move out and stay at Uncle Ray's. Don't worry, I'm getting caught up. Next week we shouldn't be so busy. Now, Pam wondered why she told her mother that. She had planned to quit just as soon as she got her paycheck. Now she was actually looking forward to getting to work, seeing all of her new friends, having a few cups of coffee. This wasn't like her at all. What should I tell Corinne? Paula looked at Pam, waiting for her response. Corinne? Corinne. Oh, her. Tell her I had to work today. Maybe next weekend. I'll take her to lunch or something. You did say Corinne was your best friend. You were looking forward to going to the mall with her. Paula was surprised by her daughter's change of heart. Busy. What with the Access Monday coming up? Pam jumped up, kissed her mother, and hugged her before heading for the door. Paula was surprised by this show of affection. Just don't turn into a workaholic, she said as Pam walked out the door. Pam looked for her car. She looked in the driveway and then the street. Somebody stole... Oops. Pulling her cell phone out, she hesitated to call Cassandra. Didn't want to bother her. Since when did she worry about bothering anyone? Pam hit the call button next to Cassandra's photo. It rang twice, and then she heard, "Hello, hon. You ready to come pick up your wheels?" "Well, actually, I thought I'd come in to work." "Are you sure? You spent most of this week here already." "Well, I kinda am getting to like the place." Pam wondered when had that happened. Cassandra came wheeling around the corner just about 7 minutes later. Her Ford F-250 was jacked up so high that Pam had to jump to get in. "I don't remember having to climb in last night." "Oh, you didn't. Barbara and Carol picked you up and laid you on the seat." Oh. Now Pam wondered just how much of a bother she had become. As Pam entered her office, when did it become her office? The phone was ringing on her desk. She snatched up the headset with a feeling of delight. "A Bogus Anomalous Group, how may we help you?" Her voice was what dreams were made of. "Pam? Miss Bogus? This is Cerebellum. I need more help. My mom is getting worse, not better." Pam felt her enthusiasm approaching to her job, slipping away like a wet cookie. "It's only been 2 days. Maybe she needs more time." This sounded as lame as a politician's promise. "You gotta help me. I can't take much more of this." She sounded desperate. Pam considered the fact this young kid was a con artist. As she got Pam to give her a giant kind of a discount, her sister was probably in on it as well. Wrong on both counts. Huh? What was that? Oh, the voices were back. "Okay, why don't you swing by and I'll see if our..." The door swung open. Sarah came struggling in. She looked like Pam had felt just yesterday. Sarah stumbled over and dropped into the chair in front of Pam's desk. Her eyes were bright red from being so bloodshot, and there was little white left to see. The bags under her eyes could have held all of Pam's shoes, and she had her shirt on inside out. "I just had to get away. My mom wanted me to spend the day with her scrapbooking." Sarah slid down in her chair. It's okay if I grab a quick nap. And with that, she was out. Pam went to see Cassandra's office. You have time to do a healing on a tween? Cassandra was just finishing up with a man wearing a mask. The man thanked her and nearly ran for the door. Once he was out of earshot, Pam asked, What's that all about? Oh, he's the chief of police, but he doesn't want anybody to know he comes here every week. Cassandra did a quick cleansing maneuver and then said, Send your tween and I'll see what I can do for her. Pam got back to her desk just as the phone rang again. A Bogus Anomalous Group, how may we help you? She sounded just a bit less enthusiastic than she had just earlier. Whatever became of my go bag? It was Mr. Armstrong. His voice implied he was quite displeased with her performance from the other night. His voice also implied she was not doing a good job as a receptionist. All of that in just the sound of his voice. Well, you see, Pam felt like she was suddenly 12 years old again. Mr. Armstrong continued. Oh well, didn't need it after all. That guy Milton turned out he was all muscle and no strength. He's on ice with the rest of his friends. Pam had to ask, You have all these dweebs in Bob's basement together? Her voice implied astonishment and a pinch of wonder. Yeah, I know, it's getting crowded down there. I got Bob's mother deputized as a jailer till this whole demon thing is settled. Now his voice was implying he had things under control with or without Pam's help. Pam had to ask some more. What's in your go bag? I'm just asking because it nearly got me killed. Oh, chains and handcuffs, and a few weights. Oh, Pam now wondered what was in the end kits. So what's in the... I need the address for that last guy, Waldo. I need to know, where's Waldo? His voice was now implying he didn't have time for her inane questions. I don't know. I never got to know anything about him. Mr. Armstrong didn't sound all that happy with her. Find out quick. Click. You're the investigator. You find him. Pam slammed the handset down on the cradle. Several people waiting for appointments acted as if they didn't notice her outburst. She just smiled as if this were all a normal day. Cassandra was standing right next to Pam. I need some help. Pam flashed to the last time she'd helped Cassandra. Sarah isn't a werewolf, is she? Oh, no monster this time, but we will need to do something outrageous. Cassandra looked as if she were about to commit a crime of dastardly proportions. Oh, is it something we'll have to change our names and move out of state? No, but we have to confront her, but from behind. Cassandra was now being ambiguous. Oh, okay, you did say we? Cassandra looked conspiratorial. Yes, we have to go see this woman before it's too late. And who is this mystery woman we're about to confront from behind? Cassandra looked confused for a second. Oh, Miss Bellum, of course. You must hurry. Pam grabbed her purse and they headed for the door. Cassandra drove while Pam hung on for dear life, as she found it preferable to sit with her eyes closed. That way death would be a total surprise when it happened. The sound of squealing tires and blowing horns did nothing to help Pam come to terms with her situation, as she thought about praying but wasn't too sure how to begin. Please don't let me die seemed to cover all the needed bases. Or get maimed. The truck came shuddering to a halt. Pam opened one eye and saw her home just a few doors ahead. This is the place. Now we have to wing it. Cassandra grabbed a huge purse from the back seat, then jumped from the overly elevated pickup. Pam nearly did a faceplant as she tumbled from the cab. What do we do? You want me to hold her while you punch her? Yes. No, I don't know yet. Just follow my lead. Don't make eye contact and avoid taking on any kind of guilt trip she might throw your way. They wandered up to the porch. Cassandra rung the bell. The door was opened by a middle-aged woman dressed a bit teenagerish. Her hair had been dyed recently. Her t-shirt was just a bit too tight, as were her jeans. "Yes, can I help you?" Pam drew a blank. She had no idea what she was doing or how she was going to do it. She stood there waiting for Cassandra to say or do whatever it was she was going to do or say. "Yes, Miss Bellum, it's that you won a free massage from the House to House Traveling Massage Society." "I didn't sign up for any massage." The woman looked suspicious. "Your daughter, Cindy." "Sarah," Pam pumped in. "Yes, Sarah signed you up." Cassandra looked anxious. "She filled out a raffle ticket and dropped it in the box at work." "School," Pam jumped in. School, and you're the winner, so where do you want your massage?" "Oh, that sounds nice." Miss Bellum looked as if she were looking forward to it. "How about the living room?" "Kitchen would be better." Pam spoke up. "How about the kitchen? That way you can sit in a chair and Cassandra can give you your massage." Miss Bellum led the two into her kitchen. It was as clean as a showroom. It looked as if nobody ever came in here. It was everything Pam's kitchen wasn't. Miss Bellum pulled out a chair and sat. "How's this?" "If you could sit facing the back of the chair, that would be better." Cassandra pointed Pam to stand behind the woman. Pam shook her head no. Cassandra gave her the "you better" look. "Here, this will help you appreciate the full benefits of the experience." Cassandra placed a tea towel over Miss Bellum's head, covering her eyes in the process. She then pointed Pam and made massaging motions with her fingers. Pam wanted none of this. She shook her head. Cassandra pointed out that she couldn't touch the subject while doing her healing thing. Things were not going as planned. Miss Bellum was wondering what they were doing. "I hope this doesn't take too long. I have an appointment at the nail salon in an hour." "We're about to begin, right now." Cassandra grabbed Pam by the arm and pushed her up against the woman, moving Pam's arms in a circular motion. And now that Pam was touching the woman, she continued rubbing no matter how icky it felt. Cassandra stepped back and then began to move her hands along Mrs. Bellum's body, never quite making contact. She started at the She started at the head with her hands and worked downwards. After only a few seconds, Cassandra stopped and shook her hands, as if trying to fling off some awful nastiness clinging to her. Her face showed great disgust. That feels kind of tingly." Miss Bellum relaxed as Pam rubbed her back and shoulders. This was Pam's first try at a back rub, as she just moved around doing whatever it seemed like a back rub would be like. As she worked, her hands began to ache, and then her arms grew tired. This was a lot of work. If Pam had ever considered becoming a massage therapist, this had nipped the idea right in the bud. Pam started to sweat. Cassandra started to sweat. Miss Bellum began to snore. She was out like a light that had been just turned off. Pam moved back to give Cassandra full access to the victim? Patient. The woman. Cassandra was really working now. She moved her hands around. Tiny drops of fluid began to fly around the room. Soon her dress was drenched as if it had been raining in the middle of the home. With one trembling hand, Cassandra pointed towards her giant shoulder bag. Pam looked into the cavernous carrier. Inside, she saw several bottles of water. Pulling one out, she unscrewed the cap and handed it to her co-conspirator. Cassandra put the bottle to her lips and drained it in 2 seconds. Her other hand continued working as if controlled by someone else. With the water gone, the bottle went back into the bottomless bag. It wasn't really bottomless, but the bottom was way, way down there. Pam watched as the healer worked her magic. "I hope this does the trick," she thought to herself. "Me too. This is just about the only thing I can think of," Cassandra thought to herself as well. They kept their thoughts to themselves. Cassandra stepped back, her arms shaking from the effort she had put forth. I think we're done here, she whispered, and grabbed her shoulder bag and made for the exit. Pam looked around to be sure nothing was out of place and then followed the healer towards the door. Pam ran into Sarah's sister. The sister said, Hey, you're that girl from down the block. Yes, that's right, I am. Pam thought that sounded a bit off. Did my sister sell you any cookies? The sister asked. Cookies? The sister continued. Yes, she said she wanted to get a jump on the rest of her troop by signing people up for cookies. Oh, yes, cookies. Yes, she did. I'm looking forward to buying some. And Pam worked her way closer to the exit. Must go, things to do. Oh, your mom's asleep in the kitchen. You might want to stay away for a few minutes. I stay away from her all the time. She has weird effects on people. Oh, really? Like what? Oh, you know, she's a bit critical of how I dress. The sister was dressed like a typical teen from the 60s. She said I should update my wardrobe. The sister looked around the room. Have you seen Sarah? I haven't seen her all morning. Oh, yes, she's at our office, asleep. Pam hoped she wouldn't have to explain why a tween girl was sleeping in the office. The sister gave a knowing smile. She does that all the time. It's like she's turning into a cat or something. By this time, Pam was at the door. Well, gotta go, things to do, people to see. She all but ran out the door and over to where Cassandra had parked. As Pam was about to open the passenger door, she noticed the healer was sitting in the passenger seat. Cassandra held out the keys. Would you be a dear and drive us back to the office? Thanks. And with that, Cassandra sat back and closed her eyes. Pam walked around the pickup and opened the driver's door. Then she had to grab the steering wheel and pull herself up into the cab. She had to scoot the seat back enough to get her feet in under the dashboard and then fire up the massive engine. I hope I don't break this thing. Pam was going back to the office. Pam left Cassandra sleeping on the passenger seat and went inside to see what else was happening on her day off. To think I could have stayed home and had fun today, or slept or something. The phone on her desk was ringing. A bogus anomalous bunch, what can we do for you? Where's Waldo? It was him, Mr. Armstrong. His voice implied that Pam had been shirking her responsibilities to the entire planet. Look, I don't know his last name. All I know about him is he hung out with Bob because no one else wanted anything to do with him. Pam wanted to hang up. Look, sister, I don't even know what he looks like, so it's on you to find him and then let me know where he is so I can nab him. Click. Mr. Armstrong's voice said Pam had best get busy or else. Pam sat back and considered heading to the coffee shop for some more rejuvenating juice. How did it go? Sarah had walked up right beside Pam. Great, everything went. How are you doing? Feel better? Pam looked at Sarah, wondering if this tween was really a con artist or just a young kid in need. Let's go get a cup. Pam walked over to the coffee shop. The room was half full, mostly staff, but one or two clients as well. Eddie had a young girl working with him, and she looked an awful lot like him, only smaller and younger and, well, female. That's a half cup of espresso with hot water, he was telling her. A brisa, how to make an Americano. Leave some room for cream. Pam ordered as usual, and Sarah asked for a double espresso. They took their drinks over to a dark, quiet corner. Sarah looked like she'd finally gotten some rest. The bags under her eyes were now just gym bags. Maybe an overnight case at best. She sat enjoying her drink and then said, You look stressed. Something come up while I was out? Just the usual. Pam didn't want to unload on this young kid. Go ahead, tell her. See, there's this guy, and he did something stupid. Now we have to find him, otherwise some really bad things might happen. I don't have the faintest idea where to find him. All we know is his name is Waldo. Sarah laughed. You're playing Where's Waldo? Only in the real world? She laughed some more. You should look at the creep who lives next door to us. His name is Waldo. He likes to look in our windows at night when we're watching TV. Nothing else. He just stands there looking in. Man, that sounds like the kind of guy we're looking for. Pam thought it was just too much of a coincidence, and like George Norrie said, there are no coincidences. He picks his nose and he eats it. That's him. Oh man, I can't believe it. Where does he live? The other side of our place, just to the north. Sarah wrote down an address. This is his place, or at least his folks' place. Pam jumped up and ran to the front desk. Grabbing the phone, she dialed Mr. Armstrong's number. He answered in the middle of the first ring. It's about time you called. I hope you came up with something good. I did a lot of digging and I pulled some strings. I had to call in several favors, but I finally found his address. She read him the note from Sarah. As Pam was on the phone, Sarah came wandering out, the coffee cup in each hand. Mr. Armstrong sounded almost kind of nearly pleased with Pam, but only slightly. That is, in just a tad. I'm going over there and picking up before he does anything weird or dangerous. Meet me there with my go bag. Click. Why doesn't that guy appreciate anything I do around here? Pam asked herself, not thinking Sarah was sitting there listening. The tween piped up with, maybe he's in love with you, but he's embarrassed by his unrequited feelings because you never return his affections. Pam gave the girl a drop-dead look. Then she looked up the stairs. I have to go up to the attic. If I'm not back in 15 minutes, get Eddie. She walked over to the first step, not wanting to go. Sarah came over and stood next to her. Are you going up there or not? I'm trying to think of a way to get that giant heavy case down these stairs. Pam was actually thinking about quitting and going home. Sarah said, why don't you just ask somebody to help? She took the long pull from her coffee. Pam was shocked by this idea. Not that it was a shocking idea, but that she hadn't thought of it herself. She should be smarter than a girl, not even a teenager yet. Shouldn't she? After all, she was a C student. Pam knew she was an A student at heart, but the History Channel was too cool to not watch. It was just too bad that the history they covered was never any of the tests. As the two girls stood there, each wondering their own thoughts, the door to the coffee shop opened. Mikey Baba Ganoush came stalking out. It looked extremely difficult to stalk while wearing a dhoti, but Mikey did his best. He thought it made him look auspicious. Mikey also thought auspicious meant clever. Auspicious, promising success, promiscuous, opportune, formidable, auspicious occasion, favored by fortune, prosperous, fortunate. Mikey looked like a pale young man in a diaper trying to impress people with his mental abilities. He stopped when the two young girls both looked his way. He had difficulty dealing with young girls, or old girls, or women. He had the same trouble dealing with other men as well, or young men, but not as much as with women. If he had really been a psychic instead of just a poser, he would have known not to exit the coffee shop at all. Sarah said, "You look big and strong. How about helping my friend out with a task?" She sounded as if the task were small and easy. More of a gentlemanly kind of venture than a back-breaking undertaking that just might wind him up in the hospital. If not for the fact that Sarah was the first and only person to ever refer to Mikey Baba Ganoush as big or strong, let alone both in the same sentence, Mikey might have come up with some overly important reason as to why he couldn't help. Not now, or ever for that matter. However, he looked at the two young girls standing there, one batting her eyelashes at him. "Oh, you see, it's just that, okay, what do you need?" Pam stepped in, being careful to not snatch the spell away. "I need a case brought down from upstairs." Well, that was all true, just not all the truth. Mikey looked around, trying to find somebody else to pawn this task off on. Well, I guess I could do that. Great, follow me. Pam took off up the stairs, hoping Mikey would still be behind her when she got to the attic. Sarah ran up the steps as if nothing in the world was as easy as climbing these stairs. This is quite a place. You think it might be haunted? The shadow wisped past Sarah, unseen and unfelt. It made the top step and rounded the corner, heading for their destination. Pam hoped it wasn't about to set a new trap to spring on her. The second floor was awash with staff and customers, each one talking at the same time. Their voices came through the transoms above each door. One door stood open, in preparation for an angry exit. Pam saw Garrett sitting at the table, reading the backs of the cards to the three science guys. It would appear the science guys had made up. Garrett waved to Pam as he declared, "Wavy lines like water." The scientists all wrote on their clipboards. One science guy whispered something to the second science guy. The third one yelled, "I heard that, you non-learned putz." Number one stuck his tongue out at number three. This got Garrett to laughing. Pam said as she went by the door, "Doctors, please, remember your manners." And then she hurried away en route to the third floor. This Access Monday must be getting everyone in a tizzy. This place is never this busy. The third floor was quiet. Well, as quiet as it could get with all the noise coming up from below. Pam spotted Barbara. Barbara, what was her last name? It slipped Pam's tongue, sitting at a table, gazing into a crystal ball. As several old women sat around with her, all intent on whatever she may perceive in the gemstone. Baba Ganoush started towards his office as if forgetting he was there to help. Pam said, "Just one more floor. It's in the attic office." "Attic? Oh, yes. I never go up to the attic." Sarah chimed in with, "Always a first time." She had no idea how to get to the attic, so she waited for Pam to lead on. Pam walked down the hallway to the door at the end. Opening it, she nearly ducked, expecting something nasty to happen. When nothing jumped out and nobody grabbed her by the throat, Pam stepped through and up the stairs. It was gloomy in the narrow corridor, and the steps looked uninviting. "Nearly there," she said, sounding as if death were just around the corner. Once more the door at the top was locked, and Pam rattled the knob a few times. When her hand let go of the knob, the door swung open on its own. "I hate this," she mumbled, stepping up into the attic office. Sarah came next, followed by Mikey. Pam pointed out the go bag in the corner behind Mr. Armstrong's door desk. "It's that one with the chains and the padlock on it." Grandy had somehow managed to get the overly weighted bag up here. Mikey walked over and looked down at the leather case. He looked back at Pam and Sarah. "This one? The bag looks as if it weighs 500 pounds? Pam said, "Yes, that's the one. Just need it downstairs and in my car." She tried to look positive about his ability to heft the substantial case. "If you just grab it, we can be on our way," Pam tried smiling. Mikey didn't like the way the receptionist was looking at him. He thought it was what it looked like to stare into Ed Gein's eyes just before dinner. He reached down to the handle. "No way, this thing weighs a ton." He got both hands through the handle. "Oh man, what is in this bag?" Pam thought about what Mr. Armstrong had said. "Important stuff. Stuff needed in the apprehension of a demon and habited customer." She did more smiling. Now Mikey was more worried. Demons and things. Nobody said anything about demons and things. Well, okay, as long as it's important. He hefted the bag and got his arms under it. Taking a step, he thought he felt the floor give way under his feet. "Really important stuff?" he gasped, unable to get more out of his mouth. Pam and Sarah both nodded. Pam put in, "Really important stuff if Mr. Armstrong is going to nab his suspect." Mikey Baba Ganoush started down the stairs. Pam wrapped a rag around Mikey's head while Sarah tried to straighten his legs. She'd heard something about this in her Girl Scout first aid class. Or was it don't straighten the legs? Sarah wished she'd paid more attention in class that day. Pam said, "I'm so sorry you stumbled. It was a good thing you were close to the bottom of the third floor. Somehow Mikey had tripped, slipped, stumbled, bounced down the steps to the second floor landing. As he was coming to a stop, the go bag had slammed into him, pushing him over the top step, heading down to the first floor. The bag was okay, having come skidding to a halt out on the porch. Mikey was laying on his back, both feet still up the third steps. At some point in his slide of death, the Doty had given up its attachment to his body. Somewhere up those stairs was a man's diaper, waiting for some unsuspecting victim to stumble upon it and become highly disturbed by the sight. It was a good thing Mikey had on a Speedo to protect what little dignity he was still in possession of. Sarah said, "Well, he landed in the shock position. That's a good thing, right?" She found an old army blanket and covered his body. "Don't cover his head. He'll look like he's dead." Pam pulled the blanket off Mikey's face. If you're okay, I have to get going. Demons and things." Pam was edging towards the door, unsure what else to do. Fine, you kids just run along. I'm going to sit here and enjoy myself." Mikey waved one hand over his bandaged noggin. It turned out the bandage Pam had used had once been Mikey's turban. Now it was unraveled and rewrapped around his head. Pam noticed the unusually overcrowded waiting room was suspiciously empty now that something needed doing. "Maybe Cassandra can give you a nice healing." Pam stepped out the door and onto the porch. The go bag was not going to put itself in her trunk. Sarah looked at the bag and then the car. "Maybe we can con somebody else." "No, just grab a side. We'll get it in somehow." Pam got her hands under the edge of the case and lifted. "Oh man, it's gotten heavier." She put her legs into it. Once the bag was off the porch, the two girls pushed and pulled it across the dirt parking lot. As the go bag went, it plowed up enough dirt they had to scoop the earth away from their hands so the bag could still be moved. They left a nice, smooth trail over to the passenger door. Pam opened the door and saw the end kit still occupying the floor of the car. "Darn it, we'll have to get it into the trunk." They got busy hauling the case to the back end of the vehicle. The trunk was mostly empty, with the exception of Pam's gym bag, tennis gear, her school bag still holding some of her final class projects. There was also a cardboard box holding a bunch of stuff bound for the Salvation Army, left over from last year's closet cleaning. Sarah looked at the mess, then at the go bag. "It's not going to fit," her voice implied. Pam should have been driving a newer, cleaner means of transportation. Something as nice as a sea green, perhaps. "Lift, then push." Pam got her end of the bag up and onto the lip of the trunk. As the bag entered the dark recess space used to hold things not wanted in the passenger compartment, it crushed down onto the trunk's inhabitants and smashed them flat. "Well, so much for my tennis racket." She slammed the trunk shut. "Thanks for the help. I'll be back someday." "Oh, no, I'm going with you." "You wouldn't know where to go if I hadn't told you. You owe me. I'm going with you. I've never been on a real, demon hunt. I want to watch Mr. Armstrong as he smashes Waldo in the face. Besides, I need a ride home, and I live right next door to the demon." The look on the tween's face said no argument was going to work. "Okay, get in. Good thing you're short." Pam got behind the wheel. Sarah was just able to see over the dashboard. Pam thought Sarah should be in the back seat, but she couldn't remember if that was a law or just a suggestion. It's not really a law in Texas. Sarah looked around. "Why do you keep talking to yourself?" "I'll tell you someday." Pam hit the gas and pulled out of the parking lot, heading for her neighborhood. She hoped this wouldn't be the last trip home. As they got to their neighborhood, Pam wondered what Mr. Armstrong would be driving. He didn't look like a Honda kind of guy. Pam drove by her house, and then she spotted Sarah's house. The Jaguar was parked out front. "That's his house there," Sarah pointed to the next house. As Pam pulled to the curb, she spotted Mr. Armstrong as he clomb out of a Honda Ridgeline, a weird spaceship-looking pickup that looked like nothing else on Earth. He'd had it painted woodland camouflage, and it looked like something that the Army would fly. Pam got out, hoping Sarah would head home, but the tween just stood next to her like a shadow. "Where's the bag?" He looked at Sarah as if she might be holding his go bag. "It's in the... Bring it." He turned for the front door of the house. Watching Mr. Armstrong walk, it was easy to picture a bulldozer crashing through the front door on its way to lay claim to the boy he sought. Sarah met Pam at the trunk. "I think he likes you," she whispered in a voice that meant to be heard in the next block. "No such thing. He hates me and everything I stand for." Pam grabbed the go bag and pulled it from the dark coffer. Her anger made the case not quite so heavy. Getting it over to the house was a whole different story. It regained its original mass and added a few pounds, just for good measures. Pam wound up dragging the container along the sidewalk. Mr. Armstrong looked around as if expecting an ambush. Then he knocked on the door. His fist made the whole structure shake. Anyone hearing the demand for entrance would have mistook it for an earthquake. The door flexed inwards, showing light around the edges. An eye appeared at the window next to the door. Then the sound of locks being unlocked and knobs being turned could be heard. A middle-aged woman looked out at the semi-licensed investigator. "Yes, can I help you?" She sounded as if she was convinced he might just bite. Mr. Armstrong put on the charm. "Ah, madam, I was just in your neighborhood and wished to speak with your young offspring, Waldo." His smile wasn't as inspirational as it was threatening. Pam and Sarah dragged the case up onto the porch and left it next to his leg. "Has my Waldo been looking in the neighbor's windows again? It's not his fault, it's those girls. They entice him." "I need to speak to him now." Mr. Armstrong was now as charming as a hurricane. Waldo's mother turned her head and yelled, "Waldo, somebody here to see you." She thoroughly forgot to invite them inside. After a minute, Waldo came skulking down the stairs. His debonair gave the impression he was only coming down because he wanted to see what was going on out on the front porch. "Yeah, what do you want?" He talked as if he was looking for a good butt whipping. Mr. Armstrong was just the person to whip said butt. However, he put on a bit more charm. "Waldo, I heard from Bob that you are good at fixing." Mr. Armstrong winked at Waldo. "Computers." It looked like some kind of a code for something other than what it sounded like. Mr. Armstrong was holding a few bills out. He popped them between his meaty fists. "Oh yeah, I can pretty much fix any kind of a computer." He was wearing the same clothes he'd had on yesterday, which were the ones he'd had on the day before. Pam caught a whiff of unwashed teenager. Mr. Armstrong just stood there waiting, looking at Waldo. Waldo folded first. "What kind of work do you need done?" Mr. Armstrong looked around in a conspiratorial manner. "It's not the kind of thing to be spoken of out here." "Oh, it's that kind of a fix." Waldo walked out the door as if he were willing to go anywhere with this total stranger. As he passed Mr. Armstrong, his smaller-than-average fist shot out and connected with Mr. Armstrong's chest. Mr. Armstrong, I wish I'd picked a shorter and easier name for the semi-licensed investigator. Let's call him Mr. A from now on." But Mr. Armstrong said, "Oh, no, you don't. You call me Mr. Armstrong or not at all." Mr. Armstrong made an oomph sound as his chest was compressed by the unexpectedly hard impact. He stumbled back and found Pam standing behind him. Pam found the semi-licensed investigator was too much to stop. He came down on top of her like 5-ton meteorite hitting the backside of the moon. Pam made an oomph sound as she collided with the porch. She then made a squeak sound as Mr. Armstrong came down on top of her like a bull stomping on a styrofoam coffee cup filled with decaf. A demon Waldo lunged for Sarah, intent on taking her as a hostage. His fingers found no purchase as she slipped from his grasp and beat feet for the safety of somewhere not here. Waldo's mother came unglued. "What are you doing to my little boy? You stop it right this instant. I'll call the FBI on you. Just see if I won't." Pam couldn't get any air. Her lungs were not doing their job. She made another squeak sound, then just lay there trying to not turn blue. Someone scooped her up from the porch and hurled her into the air. She wished the air she was being hurled through would do something about getting inside her chest so she could breathe again. Something solid struck her in the stomach. She could feel a bony something poking her as she was draped unceremoniously over a hard, wide something. Speaking of unceremonious, what had become of the tween? The ground appeared above Pam's head. As she watched as grass and then the sidewalk and then the street came swimming past her eyes. "This is weird," she tried to say. It came out as cough, cough, cough. The camouflage door swung open beside her face, and then leather and chrome surrounded her. Pam fell over and slammed her temple into the center console. The smell of leather filled her nose. Ouch! The sound of an engine coming slowly entered her senses, and then she heard music. Some kind of old-fashioned rock and roll was playing in her cotton-filled ears. Rock and roll is here to stay. It will never die. Pam felt her body being pushed or pulled back into the seat. Now the pain was setting in. First her stomach hurt, and then her chest. Her back didn't want to be left out of it, so it kicked in and said, "You should take better care of me." That got her head into the competition for her full attention. "If you're going to puke, try to get it out the window," Mr. Armstrong's voice got in through the cotton-filled ears. Sarah stuck her head in between the front seat and said, "Wow, did you see that? Waldo turned green. That was awesome. I didn't know he could run that fast." Pam managed to open one eye. It was the wrong eye to abuse, so she opened the other one instead. Pam was sitting in the front seat of Mr. Armstrong's Honda pickup, which was rocketing down the street at what had to be an extreme abuse of the posted speed limit. Feeling this was way too dangerous, Pam closed her eyes. "Better put your seatbelt on. Don't want to get a ticket," Mr. Armstrong had to yell to be heard over the roar of the engine, combined with the sound of squealing tires as he rounded a corner. Pam considered this. He was driving 120 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood, but he didn't want a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt. With trembling, sweating hands, Pam got the nylon strap secured. She kept her eyes closed so the houses passing on both sides wouldn't terrify her so much. From the back seat, Sarah was yelling, "Oh wow, this is way cool. Faster, faster. Yahoo!" Sarah was having as much fun as Pam was not having. More tire squealing as Mr. Armstrong pursued his adversary. Pam took a quick look out the windshield. As the houses rushed by, she could just make out Waldo as he sped away, running like the wind being driven by a tornado being driven by a demon. Waldo soon vanished from view. Mr. Armstrong wasn't one to give up easily. As he approached the last place he'd seen Waldo, he slowed down and began looking for signs of a demon passing. A few people were looking to the right, some pointing and talking. He spun the wheel and headed in that direction. Way, way, way ahead, Waldo could just be seen running into the mall. "Dang it, we're losing him." Mr. Armstrong tried getting his pickup to go faster, but let's face it, you can only go so fast before you top out. Once people had stopped pointing and shouting at the green kid that had run by at somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 miles an hour, They began pointing and shouting at the Honda Ridgeline going by at 120 miles an hour. This included a couple of cops in a squad car. And with that, I'm going to call it quits for this episode. Tune in soon for the episode, which will be, I think, number 6 in this hair-raising and breathtaking adventure of Pam and the Bag Company. Until next episode, this is Chris James for Storytime.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder 3. Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.